On June the 7th of 2025, I was shot by the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, and I'm not alone. Let me explain. As President Trump's mass deportation program unfolds, federal and local officers here in Los Angeles are using excessive and violent force against journalists, legal observers, and protesters alike. I've covered protests around the world for more than 3 decades, and the law enforcement violence at anti-ICE protests in Los Angeles are as bad as some conflict zones I've seen. It's a clear violation of journalists' First Amendment rights. The LA Press Club has logged more than 100 incidents of law enforcement misconduct since June the 6th, including one where a journalist was held by LAPD for 4 days without charge. That's why they, along with the News Guild and injured individuals, have filed a lawsuit against the Department of Homeland Security. The lawsuit states that the DHS is targeting press and observers, firing tear gas grenades, pepper balls, and less lethal munitions at them. Journalists have sustained a multitude of injuries while covering the protests, including being shot with less lethal munitions in the head, face, torso, and lower extremities. Plaintiffs say that the violent conduct is ongoing, sustained, and officially sanctioned. When DHS Secretary Kristi Noem said videotaping ICE is an act of violence and the DHS will hit back hard, all of our rights are at risk. ACLU attorney Peter Eliasberg told the Center for Media and Democracy that completely unchecked violence from the DHS officers poses a serious risk and threat to journalists.
So what we're dealing with here is a government agencies that are engaging in behavior way above and beyond the pale, and in ways that, law enforcement agencies didn't used to do. But there's a contempt that the Trump administration has for the media and for the role they play in documenting what's happening in the world.
The LA Press Club also sued LAPD, winning a temporary restraining order barring the department from limiting access to media and using less lethal munitions on journalists, and has filed a separate lawsuit against the Sheriff's Department. On June the 7th, while covering an ICE raid at Home Depot in Paramount, California, I was shot by the Sheriff's Department with a less lethal projectile. It exploded and bedded in my right thigh. I was clearly identified as press. ER doctors later found the plastic casing embedded in the wound, which they removed during emergency surgery. Over 2 months later, while I was covering a protest outside the Federal Detention Center here in downtown Los Angeles on August the 8th, my first time out since my injury, LAPD officer struck me across the face with a baton, splitting my chin open. Several other journalists were hurt and detained that night, and days later the LA Press Club asked a federal judge to hold LAPD in contempt of the temporary restraining order that the court issued on July the 10th. Adam Rose from the LA Press Club had this to say.
I know these people. These are people who are suffering broken ribs, gashed open fingers, concussions. There are people who may have permanently lost vision in an eye. A democracy depends on an informed public, and you don't have an informed public without a free press. So what I'm concerned about is our democracy itself.
On September the 10th, Judge Hernan Vera issued sweeping preliminary injunctions barring DHS agents and the Los Angeles Police Department from dispersing, threatening, or assaulting journalists. The injunction also bans them from using crowd control weapons on anyone who doesn't pose a threat of imminent harm. The judge cited an avalanche of evidence that DHS agents and LAPD violated the rights of journalists and protesters, and stated that federal agents' indiscriminate use of force will undoubtedly chill the media's effort to cover these public events and protesters seeking to express peacefully their views on national policies. DHS claims its use of force is justified and restrained and blames journalists for the injuries. A department spokesman told CMD that anyone obstructing enforcement will face consequences and that no lawsuit is going to change their efforts to restore law and order. But journalists are not participants, we are witnesses. We identify ourselves and we follow the law. We're out there doing our jobs so that public can see what's happening to our friends and neighbours. This isn't about me or Los Angeles. If DHS can violently attack journalists and citizen observers without consequences, none of us are safe anywhere in the country. We have to fight for our freedoms with everything we got, or lose it.